Okay, good morning. Welcome to the session on local digital twins. I hope you had a good break. My name is Martine Delannoy. I am an anticipatory innovation specialist working at imec. I have been working at the crosspoint of strategy, technology, and cities for my entire career within a governmental setting and in collaboration with cities and with city networks across Europe. As an anticipatory innovation specialist, I'm always interested in investigating what is new, what is possible, and how transformation can be supported or even accelerated in a city's context. And that is what we will be doing together on the subject of local digital twins. The idea of a digital twin is not entirely new and has been used for some time in an industrial setting. Dr. Michael Greaves in 2002 described a digital twin as a digital information construct about a physical system. This digital information would be a twin of the information that was embedded within the physical system through the entire life cycle of the system. But how can this be applied in an urban or local context? What can it help us with? And what must we take into account? A lot of work has already been done, and today's session will help us move forward through learning from best practices, the current state, and the future policy direction. OWASC has invited 5 speakers to give a short presentation. Each of them will present for up to 8 minutes. After, we will give the audience the possibility to give a short 1-minute pitch or have their questions answered by a member of the panel of speakers. To request a pitch, please state this in the Q&A with your name, organization, and the theme you would like to bring. In the same area, you can also ask questions that I will ask for you to the panelists to have a discussion at the end. So please allow me to present our very expert panelists before each talk. So our first presentation is Ms. Andrea Holmes. Ms. Andrea Holmes works at the European Commission as a policy officer in the Technologies for Smart Communities unit of DG Connect. Her current activities focus on helping cities and communities better harness data and artificial intelligence in order to meet their environmental and climate objectives, provide high-quality services to citizens and business, and make better informed decisions. So without further ado, I'd like to allow Andrea to give a short presentation. Andrea, up to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome everybody to this session. I assume that several of you may have followed the earlier session, the first one, which was on the data, local data spaces. And I think this one very nicely kind of follows on that to understand why we've been talking about the need for availability of data, how to best ensure that the right level of or the right data quality and type of data is available to cities to actually make the most of it, to make better decisions, to provide better solutions, to provide better services, and so on. So what we'll be talking about in this session is local digital twins. And what I would like to introduce you to is what the Commission has been doing or is planning to do in order to help cities really benefit from this, I could say, technology, but it's a combination of technologies. As Martine kindly already explained, the idea of digital twins, of course, exists for a long time and is widely used, for example, in manufacturing. However, in the context of cities, although for buildings we have already seen quite some interesting use cases, for cities it's a rather new phenomenon, which will, of course, take into consideration the socioeconomic aspects of cities and not just a machine. And it's quite complex in that matter because we'll bring together essentially data from different domains to create, to enable, to facilitate decision makers in making better and more informed decisions, both For example, in short-term operational decisions, quick decisions on traffic management, in real-time pollution management, but also in longer-term, more strategic decisions to bring together. In reality, this is where its main features will really shine through on bringing together data from different domains, essentially trying to understand how cause and effect happen and better understand whether past decisions were or how they were made, whether they were effective, really understand the current state in a city's assets and management, but also to be able to make predictions, scenarios, what if scenarios, and to make effective decisions. So a digital twin in a city context is really like a virtual replica of an area of a city or of a specific domain or of a larger area of a city, and or a combination of different digital twins that may already exist. As we see, there's quite a lot of potential, both in terms of better efficiency and reducing resources, but also in terms of achieving, for example, environmental and climate goals through these better decisions. As already mentioned, there's quite a lot of examples. Some of them we'll hear about today, both in terms of cities experimenting with digital twins in their context and or European projects where they're actually trying to see whether some of the solutions already put in place could eventually be also reused by other cities, and what are the differences in the different contexts. What we see is that, of course, digital twins can range in a variety depending on their maturity, depending on their focus, depending on their usage, depending on whether it's really used only by the civil servants and or engaging with citizens. But what we see is that there may be some basic elements to it. And what you see in this slide is really how we've seen that even in European policies in the current Commission, where, as you know, the European Green Deal and Europe being fit for the digital age, so these two main Commission objectives have demonstrated how actually digital twins could be a means to achieve this envisaged twin digital green transition. So interestingly, EU Ministerial Declaration at the Digital Day in 2021, member states have committed to work with local authorities to set up a network of digital twins of the physical environment. If you look at the EU Zero Pollution Action Plan or the Adaptation to Climate Change Strategy, both of them identify digital twins as a possible means to help achieve those goals. Or if you look at Destination Earth, as you know, a big initiative of our Commission or our DG, we could eventually imagine that, for example, the network of local digital twins could contribute to creating a virtual image of the Earth. And as you have probably seen, the Digital Europe Work Program, the digital program, foresees the creation of what we've discussed earlier, a data space for smart communities, but also supporting cities in setting up local digital twins. And we'd really like to have some kind of an ecosystem of these twins formed in Europe, because as I mentioned, indeed, they're all very different, but they could have some basic components that are similar in all. And why do we look at it this way? It's because in Europe, I think what we're seeing is that there's many different initiatives popping up, but and very well so the different situations and challenges in cities may be very different. However, certainly in order to be able to effectively address, for example, climate or environmental challenges that do not know borders, right? Floods or other environmental challenges, to be able to effectively reuse resources and enable really all cities to have some kind of a way to create dashboards to analyze and monitor data and be able to make better decisions. And in order to be able to really even create a thriving market for European players to provide the input to these digital twins, there is a need to somehow create an ecosystem of these digital twins or some kind of a network. And for that, it'd be very helpful if those initiatives could seek interoperability at different levels around the platforms which serve the basis of all the data sets and stakeholders. And we're making a lot of efforts on that. And as you know, through, for example, the Living in EU movement, we're bringing together like-minded cities and communities, where I'm saying we're as a Commission is a supporting partner in this endeavor. It's driven by cities, associations, and communities to implement interoperable standard-based open data platforms and solutions. In terms of interoperability of data, we're certainly working towards that through the forthcoming data space for smart communities, but also around different components or tools of the digital twins. There could be a possibility to ensure this interoperability if they used in a if they would follow open standard-based interoperable solutions for analytics, for visualization, and so on. So what we're trying to do is, as I said, if you look at the different stacks, we're working on the data layer, on the platform layer to ensure interoperability. And for the local digital twins as an application area on top, of course, there could be different solutions, different tools to enable and really benefit from, for example, a 3D model of a city, or accessing sensor data, visualizing that, analyzing that, creating scenarios, dashboards, and, for example, citizen engagement tools, and so on. So in order to do that, we're looking at how to best help cities that have not started yet, and also to enable interoperability between existing solutions. So what is driving us is, as you know, the European Commission has a European interoperability framework that will now be revised and is moving towards a new EU public sector interoperability policy that is also going to kind of set a new, let's say, governance structure for interoperability. Within those efforts, together with stakeholders, we have put forward a European interoperability framework for smart cities and communities, which is really around the governance of interoperability on the different levels, so organizational, semantic, but even also cultural in the case of cities, and legal interoperability, and then of course the technical interoperability, which very much rests upon the so-called minimal interoperability mechanisms, but also other data standards, such as coming from Inspire, or solutions related to the CEF building blocks like big data, analytics, and so on. So the idea is to look at these available interoperability solutions as a minimum interoperability solutions, and then identify, if necessary, a possible list of referred or recommended set of open standards so that this interoperability could be ensured. What we're now doing is, of course, we've been talking to a lot of these use cases and projects and following their progress. And what we'd like to ensure is that many other cities can also benefit from this. So through the European funding, the digital program, we will be funding the creation of a data space for cities and communities. We will also help cities get up to speed with getting a interoperable set of interoperable open standard-based platforms. And the Commission will also procure a European local digital twin toolbox, which would comprise of reusable tools, of reference architectures that could then serve as a basis, as a basic foundations for any city to then create their own basic digital twin. So this is the funding that will come out in this year in the form of a call for tender, procurement contract. So please stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So a few very important points here. so that we have digital twin of cities that are virtual replicas of areas, themes, or combinations, but also that the European funding will actually help to create more interoperability and also support allowing cities and regions to actually develop their digital twins using reusable pieces, but also be able to accentuate also local differences. So that's very important. So thank you very much for the presentation. If you have any questions for Andrea, we'll ask them at the end. Now we'll move to our next speaker, which is Tanguy Coenen. Tanguy Coenen is a digital transformation strategist with a very long track record of over a decade working on conceiving and scoping digital innovation projects in the smart cities and communities area. So I'd like to give the word to Tanguy.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to this great session. I'm going to do an attempt to share my screen. So let's see where that takes us. Do you see it?
Yes.
That's great. All right, good. Now let me just go to the first slide. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so just a word about the way in which imec has been working on local digital twins in the last 4 to 5 years, let's say. First, a word about imec itself. imec is an RTO, a research and technology organization based in Belgium. We do a lot of work in like semiconductor design and development, so creating chips, but we also work a lot in the software domain. And our department works a lot on digital transformation with public organizations. So that's really where we position the whole local digital twin concept. So cities are indeed public organizations. And we help them to try to tackle wicked problems. And so for us, society is full of quite complex problems that need to be tackled. And it is a matter of having the correct decision support tools to be able to do that. And that's where the digital twins actually come in. So it's important to know that we do not actually sell anything as an RTO. We are like an organization with a big, let's say, academical flavor, but we do a lot of applied work. But what we don't do is build products or for our department, generate IP. A lot of the work that we do is with public funding. So that means that if we get funded with public means, we also feel that we should give back what we learn to society. So that means that we give back open source, open knowledge, and open data by default as much as possible, let's say. Okay, so just an extra word on these wicked problems. So that's really the core of our mission, is help public organization to tackle wicked problems. A wicked problem, what is that actually? It's something that is cross-domain and cross-disciplinary. So I think we've heard already quite a few times in the previous sessions today that this cross-domain aspect is really important. And in fact, you could say that, well, most of the issues that are being faced by today's cities are by definition cross-domain. And so it is not possible to actually tackle an issue like climate change by only looking at it from the economical domain. So you really need to have a wide intersection of disciplines and therefore data sources to be able to tackle wicked problems. They are multi-stakeholder, of course, because there are a lot of different organizations that can contribute to a certain solution of a problem. These organizations can be public as well as private. And they require, therefore, the proper type of tools. If you just allow me one moment, I'm going to close my my Teams view, because I'm getting a lot of messages, and this is disturbing. A little bit more peace. Okay, so just a couple of examples of these wicked problems that we are looking at with digital twins, just to understand the impact that we could have if we work more on local digital twins. First of all, climate change. There's a lot of work on flooding, trying to predict the effect of floods on society. So yeah, this is very top of mind in Belgium. We've had a lot of very nasty floods this summer, so it really drove the message home that well, we will not escape climate change. It's here, and it's here for everybody. So how do we tackle these types of issues with local digital twins? The same goes, of course, for, well, this kind of thing. Actually, I'm at home at the moment with Omicron. So I think we all understand that pandemics are very complex issues with a big set of trade-offs that need to be looked at. Therefore, we need a proper type of decision support tools like local digital twins. And another and last example is mobility. You cannot try to solve mobility by just looking at, let's say, social, economical, or other types of mechanisms. You really need to take a broad perspective. Right, so for us, digital twins are really at the intersection of three technologies. First of all, there is the GIS, the Geographical Information Systems. They have been around for quite a while. I think they're well established. There's a good market for that. There's a lot of knowledge. I believe most cities these days have a GIS department that does a lot of excellent work. But a number of new kits, new technologies have come along, like Internet of Things and artificial intelligence. And of course, you want to be able to leverage these new technologies as well to take better decisions within your cities. So that's where local digital twins come in as, let's say, something that you put on the intersection of these three technological domains. This is an example of, to us, what a local digital twin looks like. It's one of the demos that we've built. It's currently on display in the World Exposition in Dubai. You really see a 3D interface. So many digital twins actually have a 3D interface where you see buildings and these kind of things. But to us, that's not the essence of a digital twin. The essence is really on, let's say, the data sources that you work with and being able to enrich the data sources by applying the proper types of algorithms. They could be AI algorithms or others. Now, what you see here on the screen is an example of one of these cross-domain decision support scenarios. So we work a lot with scenarios as well in digital twins, trying to help decision makers in take better decisions. And in this case, it's on air quality and mobility, which is a very relevant topic in Flanders, where we are based. So on the left-hand side, you see a user interface where a city has been closed for traffic. And on the right-hand side, you see the impact that this has on the air quality in the city itself. This is, to us, the big picture on the digital transformation of cities as we are currently working on it. So this is really an image from our current roadmap. And so there is indeed, well, a lot of talk and a lot of activity in the digital twin domain. Actually, let's start at the bottom of this image. So I think when you look at the bottom part, the data platforms, I think this has been, well, actively researched and developed and deployed in the last 10 to 15 years. And so many cities these days have data platforms that serve them with different types of data. Either high velocity data that changes a lot, like, for example, IoT data platforms, sensor networks, these kind of things, or low velocity data, more, let's say, in the databases that don't really change a lot, like the cadastre and the GIS databases, these kind of things. Then on top of that, in the session before this one, we spoke a lot about data spaces. So indeed, I mean, all these databases that belong to different types of organizations, they are all silos. I think Ulrich showed a very beautiful slide with all these silos. And indeed, One of the challenges now is to actually get the data out of these silos, and that's where the data spaces come in. So that's really what a data space is about, having like an ecosystem of organizations that have an easy way to change data between each other so data can actually flow. But just having a data space in itself is, well, I mean, it's not really useful. You need to have an application that does something useful with a data space. And that's where we position the digital twins as really a way to help decision makers look at a whole set of domains to be able to take better decisions. But between the open local digital twin that sits on top of this picture and the data space itself, we are working on something called the Smart Data Platform. There was also a question on data lakes in the previous session. That's where we see data lakes come in, actually, where we actually need to have like a platform that is able to serve the digital twin with the proper data in the proper data format, with the proper semantics, and that actually is able to aggregate data coming from different data spaces. And so the data space platform is working with different data spaces to suck data out of these data spaces, store it in a way and as long as possible, and according to all the requirements that are being placed in these data spaces, and then offer it in a nice and useful and performant way to the open local digital twin. We are working on a whole number of projects to make that happen. You can see these on the right. I think Jurgen, after this presentation, will speak about DUET, so I'm not going to expand on that. We're also working there with the Digital Flanders agency to make that happen. There's Urban Age that works more on the issues that the older citizens are facing in cities. There is Precinct that focuses on critical infrastructure and the effects of different types of things that can go wrong in society on your critical infrastructure. And I think that's a very top of mind subject today. So how will the upcoming Omicron wave, for example, impact our critical infrastructure? Our hospitals, yes, but what about our logistics supply chains? What about our food supply? What about our electricity supply? So that's kind of a very timely project. There's a Bruges deployment that we're doing at the moment. So working with the city of Bruges in Flanders to create a local digital twin there. And then there's a project called PIL, which is more about like applying a digital twin to a port. So there's also a lot of work that we do in looking at digital twins and how they apply to ports, because, well, Flanders also has a number of big ports, and looking at how you can apply this technology to ports is also quite top of mind. Okay, and then just a couple of slides to end up with. Flanders is actually working a lot these days on data spaces as well, together with digital twins. So data spaces, they are important at an EU level, but of course you need to translate them to a local level also to make them work. So in Flanders, there are three big initiatives that we are currently working on. One is called VLOCA, which is about looking at in the part where I showed like the big picture on the digital transformation. The bottom part was about these data platforms. So how do you actually, for Flemish cities, create an open city architecture that cities can actually work with to create their data platforms of the future? And I think for digital twins, it's quite useful to also have something VLOCA-like, so that you have a reference architecture, because the digital twin is it's a complex beast. It has different moving parts. Having a good reference architecture that cities can use to actually build on when they want to deploy their own local digital twin, I think is quite important. So we are looking at VLOCA and how that can translate to digital twins. Then there is a data nutsbedrijf, which is about creating a private sector owned company for making sure that data can flow within society. It's being bootstrapped by the Flemish government, but the idea is that it will slowly become private. And then there is the Vlaamse sensor data space, which is about actually making sure that we can publish fast-moving data, so sensor data, in a data space in a way that is very compatible with all the concepts and principles of linked data.
Okay, thank you very much, Tanguy. Are you
more slides, Martine, and then I'm done. Just one more is the paper that we wrote on digital twins a while ago, on which you can read up if you want to know more about how we see digital twins. And then the last one is the paper that was already referenced this morning by Andrea Holmes on how Gaia X and data spaces could serve smart cities and communities. And in fact, there's also a lot of talk about digital twins in that paper. So that might also be of your interest. Apologies for interrupting, Martine, and maybe apologies for going a bit over time.
Okay, no problem, but I'll shortly introduce the next speaker, and I'm sure there are a lot of issues and a lot of interesting points that would be interesting to ask questions on in the further rounds of the session. So I'd like to introduce Jurgen Silence. Jurgen is the owner of Cybertech and was involved in the DUET project, which has recently won the Smart City Award in Barcelona. So I'd like to give the floor to Jurgen to give us a bit more information on this interesting initiative.
Okay, thank you, Martine, for the introduction. I will share my screen. Today I will replace Lieven Raas, who is the DUET project leader and he couldn't make it today, unfortunately. But I would also like to start to thank OWASC to be invited for this very nice festival. In this local digital twin session of the OWASC Festival, I will give a brief introduction on the DUET project. The DUET project is a Horizon 2020 project that started 2 years ago, so still 1 year to go now. And at this moment, we realized our open beta version, what is really very nice, since today we can present some of the results that we have already. But okay, let's start with the beginning. The main goal of the DUET project is to build a tool that can be used by a broad variety of people to make crucial policy decisions based on massive real-time data, data that are gathered in the city. But what is a digital twin? Well, a digital twin can best be described as a digital replica of a system, a process, or a place which mimics the real world behavior. So you can make digital twins of a complex plane motor, but in our case, we built digital replicas of a city. So in fact, a digital twin is a real-time updated collection of data, models, and algorithms that allow us to make better real-time analysis. Okay, a local digital twin brings together entrepreneurial thinking, agile processing, and open innovation to governmental decision-making. And by using digital twins, you can connect legacy systems, data become understandable, the impact of policy decisions can be monitored, but also the public decisions can be made more substantial. And the digital twin allows us also to experiment and innovate in cities and across regions. With the local digital twins, you can combine 2D and 3D terrain information, IoT, predictive data models, and visualizations to fully understand the impact of an intervention inside a city. With DUET, we created a tool that is very easy to be used and understood by everybody, regardless of their technical and academic backgrounds. The outcome of DUET are 2D and 3D interfaces that make the city easier to understand. So DUET helps to better interpret data. DUET provides an integrated view of the city seen from different angles of view. And this way, DUET facilitates data-driven decision-making. Okay, during the DUET project, we had to deal with some roadblocks as well, of course. We had to guard data quality and data interoperability. Sometimes there was a lack of data understanding that to cope with. Sometimes there was also lack of useful real-time data sources where we had to search for a solution. But after 2 years, I think I can say that we managed well. We tackled the roadblocks, and now at this point we can state that DUET facilitates experimentation and co-creation in a way that was never seen before. And at the end of last year, we even received the World Smart City Award on enabling technologies for that. So, okay. But that's it for the theory. Let us look now to the results of the digital solution. DUET solution was deployed in 3 pilot regions, and I will start with some realizations in Flanders. Here you can see the result for the of the imec City Flows project in the city of Antwerp, where traffic was visualized using multiple sensor data. The next slide shows the shadow impact of buildings and public green in the city of Ghent, in the framework of a project where we wanted to locate shady places for elderly in the cities. And then the next slide shows the impact of road closure on traffic as calculated by dynamic traffic models. And the next slide, you can see the impact of traffic to air quality after closing a road. The cross at the bottom is indicating where the road is closed. Okay, so let's move now to the city of Pilsen. City of Pilsen is a small city of about 170,000 people in the Czech Republic. This is the second pilot city for the DUET project. It's a very interesting city since we have data and models available for to measure the traffic, the air quality and the noise. And on this first slide, you can see the city with the Patten Bridge in front of us in the foreground. So now we will simulate the closure of this bridge to see the effect on traffic, air quality and noise. And this is the result. Well, this is before the closure of the bridge. And this is the situation after closure of the bridge, where the traffic model calculated new traffic situation. We can also see the impact of the closure on the bridge on air quality. This is shown by this slide. And a very nice feature of DUET is the option to see where air quality is improved and where the air quality is reduced. So the reduced air qualities are the red colors and the improved air quality are the green colors. So this is the delta map we made. And then this slide shows the impact of the closure of the bridge to predict noise levels in the city. Okay, and this slide, well, yeah, no, it's yeah, the last slide of my presentation shows a dashboard that was created for the city of Athens to monitor traffic based on sensor data. Okay, but that's it for my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. It's very interesting actually to see how it effectively looks and how it can be used and which the themes are that you're working on with so many cities. I'd now like to give the floor to Marcos Antonio Nogueira, which is the head of the Alentejo EU office and also coordinating an Horizon 2020 project under the name AURORAL. Marcos, can I give you the floor?
Thank you. Yeah, okay, good. So that's very simple set of slides anyway. AURORAL is a project that is concerned with, I would say, 3 things. So some sort of grand objectives that we try to follow. Let's go through later. A digital environment to achieve those grand objectives and a set of regions to be possible to develop those ideas, to establish the smart communities, to end up with a dense network of smart communities anchored in the regional scale. We feel that it's critical to have this regional scale present in order to achieve the critical mass, the critical scale in order to succeed. So we work with small villages, but they are not isolated. They are part of a regional community. Towns, yes, they are part of a network of towns within a region. A metropolitan area connecting to the region, yes, they are sharing. And that's indeed the way in order to prevent the smaller communities to be left isolated from innovation. So that's a matter of access to innovation and a matter of not leaving nobody behind. So let's see if I can, okay, share the, yeah. So there are some, within AURORAL, okay, we work on several areas. One of the areas relates to KPIs, artificial intelligence on territorial management, a little bit of so some vertical innovation services present using and taking benefit from the digital environment we are developing. But indeed, one of those verticals is governance as a smart service. And why so? Because we need to bring more data, more knowledge, and better understanding of the long-scale impacts of governance decisions. To do so, we need modeling, we need artificial intelligence too, but some other tools. And that's a very interesting approach because it makes us to integrate. And integrate is indeed getting achieving that cross-fertilization of innovation throughout several sectors and indeed get rid of silos and barriers in order to achieve things together. So that's very much our European way of doing, so stronger together. There are some hallmarks for success we are trying to follow. So to have common databases, of course, that's the principle of digital twins to align methodologies among several people and institutions participating. We are very, very open approach project, and indeed that's our nature, because the digital environment we develop is indeed the one to make it possible to co-develop solutions. So aligning methodologies among several participants is indeed critical, and indeed to prepare data sets, to prepare digital spaces, and hopefully in future at the regional scale to prepare digital twins to be possible to work on modeling and to make proper long-term assessment of impacts. And that's the way to govern regions in the territorial intelligence approach. That's very important when we are facing strong challenges such as demographic challenges, nature protection challenges, social challenges related to the impact of new technologies in all the learning process, and nature protection challenges are indeed very diverse. They come from soil, water, biodiversity, landscape, maritime regions, and so that's indeed a need of integration, a need of intelligence, a need of artificial intelligence connected to modeling and to deliver better tools and better knowledge for territorial management. Doing so, we make it possible to do a more open governance and government to provide to the citizens services, smart services, governance, government as a service. So that's the lineup of ideas. Sorry, I skipped the slides. Okay, there is a little bit of ongoing work, mostly under the scope of Living in EU. That's amazing network. We really love to work under Living in EU approach. It's indeed the way to make a lot of different partners from everywhere to be present, sharing the same ideas, and to have this shared discipline of cooperating. So we don't cooperate because we meet each other somewhere, even because now we are not allowed to do it due to the virus. But we cooperate because we are really committed to cooperate. And that's from cooperation that we can really reach the scale, keeping diversity. So we need scale on one hand, but we need to keep our European way of doing with a lot of different participants, a lot of different stakeholders, different regions, different backgrounds altogether. So this is going on and Living in EU. I'm very enthusiastic of the platform. It has been perfect cooperation, now open to the regions, and we are indeed building the regional pillar, so the digital transformation of regions. So that's a wonderful environment to work on, so please join. Okay, there are some, I mentioned cooperation, I really mentioned the word a lot of times, but there are some potentials we try to deliver from cooperation, and I mentioned the fact of enhancing this regional dimension, not only to make cooperation to be possible, because we have several regions talking and not 90,000 of municipalities in Europe, but also to get the critical mass in each one of the applications in order to enable a better outreach and to have capable networks in every region. That's good for a lot of things, but that's also good to work with digital twins. So this is the critical slide, I would say. So that's more or less our approach. Please keep in mind that the central topic is to use modeling to sustain territorial governance, intelligent territorial governance. So in that fact, we need to begin with the digital twins to expand it to the regional scale, which is an amazing challenge. So I hope we can work together on that. To have open architectures, that's on us, Aurora, to work real time with sensors and data coming and circulating among, I don't know, but remote sensoring, 5G, KPIs from everywhere, government as a service, also providing feedback of data, and achieving this interoperability of data sets, sensors, and the regional scale digital twins to make it possible to have these smart digital platforms, the data spaces that make possible to the community leaders to cooperate better under open networks at a regional level. So that's the way to achieve long-term scenarios. To make it wrong on long term is much worse than on the short term. So we are not allowed to have mistakes on the long term. So we have to have proper, better, safe, secure long-term scenarios in order to sustain territorial governance decisions on those, to have policy feedback every time we need it in order to keep impact assess of deviations along in continuous or on real time. So we started already working with that, and indeed there is an appeal, a call for updating the scope and the KPIs under the regional innovation scoreboard. It comes from 20 years ago, the Lisbon strategy. Lisbon strategy was an amazing one, but we need to update the score. And that's just a task, an additional task we have to deliver together. I mentioned the grand objectives, of course. For all this is motivated to the need of better protecting people and nature, to work with scenarios forecast and not getting it wrong on the long term, to enhance decision-making process everywhere is needed, not on the short term, not only for investment and procurement, but also indeed for strategy, designing strategy together at a regional level. Quantitative approach to nature protection with quotas that may protect soil, water, biodiversity, landscape, and coastal areas. And also on the other side, to achieve better inclusion, to better approach to include demographic challenge, the layers of the population, which is very important because, of course, demographics is also something that requires long-term approach and good decision-making, and to deliver it as part of government as a smart service. I mentioned some institutions, some of them are present. Those are the ones we try to attract for this platform, working for sharing some adventures under living in EU. That's already happening. So that's very, very free and open to other entities to join. So please drop us an email and come to share your visions. A good opportunity to do it is the summit, European Visions for Smart Communities. That's in May, the 9th to the 14th of May in Évora, Portugal. You are most welcome. Registrations will be open next week, so you can start just letting us know that you may be interested in doing a presentation or coming to Alentejo, or just enjoying the networking. These are some figures of last year's summit. Last year's summit was part of the Portuguese president. This year is follow-up. That's really needed. We need the regions to work together with the cities, the community leaders, the commission, and sometimes the national national governments in order to make it right. So that's why we pay so much attention to this event, because that's indeed the opportunity for the regions to come together to share aspects related to the smart communities, with the final objective of delivering this dense network of smart communities for Europe. Okay, I will stop here. The presentation is a bit bigger because there are some details on the project. I will leave it just to share, not to present now. And our contacts are here in the end, so please get in touch. And I think I finished my time, so that's just finish with again with a big thank you, and say that's really a privilege to be part of this panel and to share this so that's indeed very interesting things I could see on the other presentations. So thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Yeah, and also thank you for you. And I think there's a lot of objectives and a lot of tasks we're trying to accomplish. But it's very good to hear that the smart regions are also involved in looking at how we can broaden the digital twin to a regional aspect. So thank you very much also for your presentation. And I'd like to give the word now to Roland van der Heijden, that is joining us as an urban planner and program manager of Digital City Rotterdam, which is of course also a good practice when it comes to digital twins. So I'd like to give the floor to Roland van der Heijden for the next period. Roland, are you present?
Yes, thank you, Martine. Thank you also for the opportunity to tell a bit about what we are working on in Rotterdam. And therefore, I also want to like to share my screen. So can you give me the confirmation that you see my full screen now?
Yes, we see your screen.
Yes, your screen.
Okay, then I want to make some things smaller because they're all on my screen. So yes, for us in Rotterdam, the whole thing around digitization, digital transformation, digital twinning, all starts with that we think that we see that reality itself is changing. So the world we are living in, the world that we are experiencing as people is changing. And to better understand that, it's important to see how our world and our city as we know it has come to life. And that's mainly based on we people. You could call that a social reality. That stands for us people communicating with each other, the way we behave ourselves, etc., and interact with each other. And that we do that always in the physical surroundings around us. We're always connected to that physical space around us. And in the context of that city, you could say that the dynamics between us people and the physical surroundings has shaped that city. We are constantly influenced by the physical surroundings around us. And at the same time, we're constantly trying to shape that physical surroundings accordingly to how we want it to be. And that dynamics, that has been the basis for our reality as we experienced it for centuries. But recently we saw, and we could call that the traditional city, the context of the city. But recently we see that there's a whole new reality arising. That's what we call digital reality. And we believe that the digital reality is much more than just an instrument that we can use in our traditional focus of the social physical reality that we live in. Or better, but still not the right thing, is that we see the digital reality as some kind of parallel world. That's next to the world normal people live in, where we have some kind of digital reality. And sometimes something pops over from that digital reality in our social physical reality, and then we need to deal with it in terms of data leakage or what kind of things. But we think that the digital reality is no longer a parallel world or just an instrument. It's completely interwoven with the social and physical reality, and those three realities together make our new world that we're living in. So digital is all around us and completely interwoven with everything, every aspect of our life. And you could say that towards the future, the smart city, that's very popular that we're living in, is based on the fact in the way that we are succeeding in connecting those realities to each other and let them work together. And the better those realities are connected and working together and stimulate each other, the smarter we as a city will be. And we believe that the digital twin that we are talking about is first step towards what we call a digital urban community, in which those three realities are completely connected to each other as being one reality as a whole. And when we're looking at that reality,
quickly, Roland, so we are seeing the starting slide only, just so you know. If you're changing slides, we don't see it.
okay, I'm now to the next slide. You don't see this?
Nope, only the opening, like the very, very opening.
Oh, what's going wrong then?
Okay, Martine, you have it.
Do I need to stop sharing or?
Yeah, maybe try, but just do something.
Okay, new share. Is this better? Do you now see a second slide?
Yes.
Full
it's
screen,
not.
and it's a different slide. Don't know if it's the second, but now it's changing and so on. So Martine, maybe you can follow, and if there's anything, just shout. Maybe it's just me, but I think it's better. Yeah, looks good now. Thanks.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So when we're looking at that new reality that contains that digital, social, and physical reality as parts of that new reality as a whole, when you look at that, then it's also important to look at the underlying digital and physical and social infrastructure of that new reality. And the social physical infrastructures that are, of course, well known to us, but the digital infrastructure is completely new. And for there, it's also very important to think for us as a government, what kind of role do we have in the development of that digital infrastructure? In the social and physical infrastructures, we have all kinds of roles. But when we're looking at the digital infrastructure, our first reaction is still, okay, let's leave it up to the market. Why should we be bothered by that? Google can do this much better than we can. But we really believe it's very important to think not only the things that we as a municipality are directly connected to, but also for the city as a whole to think about, okay, but who and under which conditions should that digital infrastructure be developed for that city? Now, and in that thinking, we believe that the open urban platform that we see as a centerpiece in that digital infrastructure to develop, we believe that the open urban platform can help us better understand and get that digital infrastructure evolve by initiate the development of that open urban platform. And we do that by what we call the urban digital twin concept. Now, and the urban digital twin concept is in that sense based on at first a smart 3D model of the city. And in Rotterdam, we have the whole physical world described in a smart 3D model. And smart means that everything in that model is an object. So when it's an object, you can attach data to it, etc. You can ask smart questions to that model. The basis so that the 3D model that contains buildings, cables and pipes in the underground, trees, benches, waste bins, all the things that you will encounter in the physical world are described in this 3D model. Now, and when you combine that physical description by the 3D model, when you combine that to real-time data that gives information about how the city is functioning. For in this example, you see waste bins and how full they are. So we have waste bins in our 3D model, and we connect to it if they're full or not. And we have traffic lights, and we connect to them if they're burning or not. We have streets, and connected to it what the air quality is or how many cars are driving through. When you bring those two realities together, then you get what we think is a digital twin. So a digital twin in our terms is nothing more or nothing less than describing the current reality of a city in terms of data. And that forms a basis for all kind of things that you can use it for. But that will I will talk about that later. So it describes the current reality as we just can experience around us. And as you see here, you see the parking lots, and then you see if they're occupied or not. And of course, you can also store your digital twin. And then you get all kinds of historical patterns about the functioning of your city. So you're not only seeing if that parking lot is occupied right now, but also how often it was occupied in the last 5 months between Monday and Friday. Now, if you look at this, then you can say that the digital twin gives all kinds of advantages. It gives meaning to that open urban platform. The open urban platform is a centerpiece of digital infrastructure. But why should you go there? What is happening there? Why is it interesting? Now it's interesting because it offers you an actual current picture of the physical reality of the city. It visualizes that, and it gives also the historic state of that city. It offers you all kind of common and shareable images as a starting point for cooperation. You can in all the kind of challenges that we have as a city, we need to work together with all those stakeholders in the city. And everybody now works from his own reality. And then using that reality for his own models, for his own policies. And in the end, the results of that policies are compared to what the results are of the policies of other stakeholders. And then they don't match. But everybody is right, because they all started from their own reality. So there, it's very important that we have the discussion with the stakeholders in our city about, okay, but are we looking at the same city with the same reality as we see it? And from there, start our policy making. So it's also the basis for numerous applications and services that you can build on top of it. Of course, also scenario planning, city dashboarding, whatever kind of things. But in our opinion, it's not a part of smart applications, but it's a basis for smart applications. So we see the digital twin really as a part of the generic layer in between. Then we see it as a part of the algorithms that you could use it for AI or whatever kind of things. We really believe that it enhances the way of ecosystem way of thinking, because it makes it possible that also all kinds of applications are going to talk to each other through the digital twin. It stimulates all kinds of generic, scalable, and maintainable data sources. That's very important. It gives, of course, a consistent user experience. Everybody is looking, of course, to the layers of what for him or her is important of the digital twin of the reality of the city, but it's all based on the same data lying underneath. And of course, it all offers all kinds of new possibilities for citizens' participation and citizens' empowerment. And it stimulates economic innovation. Now, having said this, we really believe that the digital twin from there is a basis for all kinds of new developments and new tools. Now, here you see different tools and developments that we're working on. So we use it for the acceleration of the permit process. We use it for new forms of co-creation and participation by the citizens in spatial planning issues. We use it for a tool for better safety in the city, better physical safety in the city. We have an app which makes it possible to see new visualizations of new buildings in the city on true scale, and also as some kind of mock-up that you can put everywhere. We're working on a digital twin for sustainability as a first driver for really get that digital twin used with all the important stakeholders around, in this case, the topic of sustainability. And also we're working on scaling the whole digital twin thought, the urban digital twin thought, to the more regional boundaries together with the city of The Hague and the province of South Holland. And also to get all the smaller municipalities get along in this development. Now, a little bit on open architecture, and then I'm out of time, I think. We see the basic thought is that there are 3 layers. We have the open data with all kinds of data sources in our urban ecosystem of the city. We have we see the data platform in the middle, and we see on top of that all kind of applications for the benefits of all kind of users. And when you compare that to LEGO, you could say, okay, we have all kind of data sources. And on the left, you see companies. In the middle, you see all kind of data from knowledge institutes. And on the right, you say all kind of data sources by municipalities. And when you think about that green Lego plate that we used as a child when we were smaller to build our things on, you could see that as the visualization of the open urban platform. And then on top, you can build all kind of different information buildings based on the different data sources. Now, and to make this kind of thinking possible, it's very important that, as mentioned earlier, the data interoperability. So it needs to be possible and easy to exchange data between these different layers. Now, and for that, we used what we call the pivotal points of interoperability, PPIs. That was developed, that conceptual thinking was developed within the Espresso project, European Espresso project. And so you could see, just like Lego, there are all kinds of shapes, colors, number of blocks. They're all different, but there's one thing that is important, and that's the dot structure, because the dot structure makes it possible that all those blocks are fitting to each other. So they're all kind of variations, but one thing needs to be secured to make it possible to exchange it. Now, when you translate this to the minimal interoperability mechanisms, then we have, as you see here, is our list, because we see the MIMS at first as a conceptual way of thinking, and secondly as, okay, and how can you develop the different software blocks connected to that? And at this moment, we're trying to procure our platform. So that's the phase that we're in now. And in that thinking, we see this as what we call our minimal interoperability mechanisms at this point. And that's where I want to stop my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Roland. It was a very interesting presentation, and it gave us also a few questions and food for thought, maybe for the discussion that we still have time for now. I have one question in the Q&A that might be interesting to ask, and after I have a few of my own if there are no new questions popping up, sorry. So the one question that's in the Q&A that's interesting maybe to highlight is, do you use standardized data models when developing digital twins? Roland, would you like to try to answer this first? And after, maybe I'll give the word to Tanguy also.
Yes, yeah. When we're talking about standardization of data models, of course, different aspects to that. You have the technical aspects, you have the semantic aspects, even juridical and organizational aspects of interoperability. But the most important ones, I think the technical and semantic part of that. For the technical part, we are using open data standards. So that's for us, yeah, an obligation for all parties involved in that ecosystem, if they want to exchange data or use data, that they can handle open data standards. So, for example, CityGML or WFS, WMS, for example, are data standards. There are a lot of more, but open data standards. That's not necessarily that we all speak the same language. So when I talk about a building, that can mean something different than somebody else is mentioning about the building. I really believe that those models should arise amongst the stakeholders that are working around some kind of project or issue, because then it becomes urgent to, let's say, okay, but if we have a different definition of a building, in this case, it should be important to create one definition that we can both agree upon. Now, and from there, you can build up semantic models. If you take that discussion too much upfront, then it's blocking, I think, the exchange of data, and it really becomes a very broad discussion, because then you want to discuss all possibilities up front about all kinds of definitions for all kinds of different different users. So no, So I think let's first start to make it technical possible to exchange data with each other, and from there start a semantic discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. Tanguy, would you like to add something to this question and answer?
Yes, so we are very aware of everything that's going on in the NGSI and FIWare world. We also use this a lot when we work with data that comes out of IoT sensors. So I guess maybe the question was more or less going in that direction. Then, of course, as Roland said, we also work with things like, we are aware and incorporate things like CityGML, the 2.0, the 3.0 standards. We look a lot at, well, standardized, let's say, data formats or models in the GIS world. And then one of the things that we're actually currently looking at is, well, the problem of having different machine learning models more, so algorithms, let's say. And so, as I said in the presentation also, I mean, we need to do cross-domain decision support. So that means that the models that you use to actually take decisions in these domains, they actually need to interact as well. And there's no real solution that we have found to standardize the interaction between these models. So that's really something that we're currently looking at as well.
Okay, thank you very much. We've had another very interesting question come up, and maybe Andrea has a few thoughts on this. Veronica is asking, who do you see as the owner of the digital twin platform? She states the creation of models is very costly, and what's the governance that should be used for this type of platforms? Do you have any ideas on this?
I wonder whether this question was not more addressed to Roland, who was discussing the ownership of or the platform. Oftentimes, if we're looking at the cities, of course, it's a decision by the city. No, what Roland was also saying, what is the role of the city in all this? Who owns the platform? Is it a combination of stakeholders, and who eventually has the final control? If we're discussing the overall platform for the toolbox, that's something we need to still work out, and that will be part of the detailed description of the tender document that will come out on, how would this platform let's say the availability, how would these tools for the digital twins be made available for essentially European cities? This is going to be detailed later.
Thank you very much. Roland, would you like to also fill in a few insights from Rotterdam on the ownership of the platform?
I think that's one of our main reasons to start the whole digital twin thinking in Rotterdam was based on this question. A bit the urgency of should we leave this to the Googles of this world? Should we just lean back and let them take over the whole digital infrastructure? Or do we as a municipality have a role in that? And of course, we really don't believe that it should completely commercially driven. On the other end, we also don't believe that it should completely governmental driven. So we really believe that when we're building this platform, this infrastructure for the city of Rotterdam, then all stakeholders in that city should be involved in this infrastructure. And we as a municipality see for ourselves a role as Kickstarter, let's put it like that. But together with the market parties, we're discussing, and that will also be part of our innovative procurement that we're starting soon. Will the discussion on how this governance model of the platform should look like. And our main question in that is that we, at one hand, want to have a platform that can be commercially exploited to the max, but at the same time within the framework of the societal and public values that we want to maintain in that. So the tension between those two, that's, in our opinion, the most important part to give form in that governance model that we need to develop. Now, and how it eventually will look like, that's something that we don't know yet. But this is our main goal for the development, and to search for the right answer in governance structures underneath this platform and digital twin as part of the digital infrastructure of the city.
I don't know if what happened on Martine's side, but let's hear the good discussion. I mean, it's really some central questions, because they follow on to what we discussed even in the previous session on the data spaces. So who owns the data? Nobody has enough data. And anyway, if you do have all the data, then probably that's not a good idea. And we will be discussing also, as we saw in the Q&A comments, Michael pointed out, I mean, the next session will be about the evolution of this minimal interoperability. So perhaps one thing to decide, so Roland and Tanguy, when you create your twins, how do we decide what is really like extremely tightly coupled? So very strong semantic interoperability, an address should be known, or maybe the automated decision making and the models will have some other parts which are more fluffy. So how do we decide to sometimes have strong and sometimes have weaker semantic interoperability? Is that something you can already see now in what you're building? I mean, Roland, you're essentially procuring many of these things. So how do you give guidance on this? Where do you look on this? I don't know if you want Tanguy first, and then you, Roland, and let's see. We also have Marcus and Jurgen here.
So the question is on like the tight coupling in terms of semantics, like what do you put maybe in the digital twin platform and what goes outside of the digital platform? Is that what you're hinting at, Martin? I'm not 100% sure I'm getting the question.
No, but maybe, I mean, if you could know in advance that all little bits and pieces. There were several comments about, for instance, NGSILD and the data models. So do you need all of that, in place in order to move ahead? Or can you say, oh, only in these places do we need these key data models or ways of structuring our semantics? And then there's other parts where it's more dynamic, maybe driven by, actually, dynamically it's changing, so what fits together. So that's what I'm hinting at. I mean, how strong can you go in saying which where you find them? Roland, maybe you mentioned the PPIs. So the MIMs and the PPIs, of course, they have been developed in tandem and they close different gaps. So I mean, do you have enough to put in your tender? Can you even be so specific?
Yeah, at this moment, we believe that that we see the MIMS, we see that as different functionalities brought together or connected based on the PPI thinking. And we start with what we, as the minimum interoperability mechanisms also say here, the minimum number of interoperability mechanisms that we think we need to start or to kickstart that urban platform as a first version of that open urban platform to be developed. And from there, we see in the future more functionalities attached to it, based on the idea that when a certain functionality is generic enough and needs to be used by others, then it will become part of the platform. And when it's specific enough, and it's just part for one or a small number of stakeholders, then it will be an application. So in the end, the thinking between applications and platform is not that interesting. It's one ecosystem of functionalities combined or connected to each other based on open data standards. And just the fence around the generic functionalities is what we call platform. And everything outside of that is application or data source or user.
Yeah.
And they need to be connected. Now, and to that connection, the technical connection is the most important. The PPIs, in that sense, is first based on, okay, let's make sure that we can read it by my computer. Okay, I don't know if the definition of that particular, let's say, building is the same as I use. No, that will be different because our housing corporation has a different understanding of a building than the fire department. And they have a different understanding of a building than we as a municipality have. And that will be different than the user or the renter or the buyer of that house will have. And we cannot get all those definitions aligned to each other. So, and that's also not needed. But let's first make that everybody can see the house from his own definition, and then have the discussion, okay, where are the differences? And do we need to align them or not?
Yeah.
Thank you. Martine, you're back. So I'm stepping out here. So I give the floor back to you. But Tanguy was sort of asked something and never gotten the opportunity to answer. So perhaps, but we're also nearing the end. So I step.
Yeah, sorry for that. I had a bit of technical difficulty, a reality of our new virtual world sometimes. Tanguy, yes, you were giving more information and feedback on what Roland had brought in.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I mean, to me, the question is also about some kind of like a reference architecture for a local digital twin. And I think there's many houses that you can build. There's many different interpretations of what the architecture could look like. I think what is really very much needed is like kind of a platform where we can work together to find out what a good reference architecture is. And then for sure, each of the building blocks in this reference architecture will be implementable in many ways. It could be either proprietary software, or it could be more open source software. But I really think that this is, I mean, we have now come at the stage where, I mean, many parties have built digital twins, and we could actually work together to come up with a good reference architecture on that.
Yeah, very good, Tanguy. We're running at the last minutes of our session, so it might be interesting to go through each of the speakers and ask them what their top learning is to share with the participants through working around digital twins. So what is for you the top next step that we should take or next need that we should try to fulfill with the digital twin? Who would like to take this first? Jurgen, would you like to take this first? So just very
Yes.
shortly in 1 minute, what's your top learning or takeaway through working on digital twins?
Maybe besides the standardization of the data sets themselves, we also need the process of data collection to be standardized. And I think this is something important to have in mind, because this makes, well, we have to make sure that the data sets that they are of high quality, that they are interoperable, and that they are also easy to understand. Another point in the highlight of the DUET project is that we have to invest in the creation of data sets themselves, since there's still many crucial data missing. Well, I'm speaking for the Flanders region, but I guess it's the same for other regions as well.
Yeah. Andrea, would you like to also give a response? Of course, the European Commission has a lot of things planned and very good initiatives, but maybe there's still a few other learnings that we could share.
Yeah, I think I appreciate a lot the discussion around data models, because they're going to be crucial for setting up digital twins. If I look at the learnings from today, I see there's over 100 participants. So if there are cities out there that would like to experiment with twins, I think we would encourage them to do so and learn from those examples that were presented, for example, today, so that they can start working with let's say, more simple type of twins, to be able to actually put in place a different way of working, because it's not only the technical part, but it's really bringing together different domains in a city. It's different workflows, it's different culture, to actually come to some realizations that bring together these different domains. So that's number one. For us, what I think is important is that those who do have such twins is to share with us, so we can bring really together a community for best practice sharing, and for really coming to closer to what Tanguy was saying, to really identifying what is a reference architecture for, if I may say so, for European digital twins, what it takes to really build on what is already out there, so minimum interoperability mechanisms, and work towards open standards and reusable solutions, so we can really help all cities, communities, and even regions benefit from these new technologies.
Thank you very much. Roland, would you like to also add something? What the learning was of Rotterdam, or the learnings that you would like to share with the other participants?
Yeah, there are so many learnings that we're constantly learning, and we're also working quite some years now on this whole development. So yeah, we can write a book about it, I think. But let's start with, at this moment, I think, two major learnings that I think are very important. The one is most connecting also to what Andrea was mentioning, and that's that it's really a new way of working. You need to really understand that is that what we're facing here with each other is, as a colleague of mine always used to say, it's just 25% content and technique, and this 75% organizational and cultural change. So the biggest part, the biggest problem, or the biggest challenge is on organizational and cultural change, and not necessarily on content and techniques. And that's what, and we're just still talking about this part of the problem. So that's the easy part. So I think that's really important to understand that. And the second thing is, and that's also what we had the discussion in the beginning all about, I think it's really important that and mainly the cities, but also I think other parties and governmental organizations should really think about a broader perspective on the digital infrastructure in your city. What does it mean? It's not, you're not, you as a municipality, you're just one of the stakeholders of your city. You're not the city. So that's very different, that the difference should be understood. And in that city, there are all kinds of stakeholders interacting with each other that we as a municipality are no part of. But at the same time, we need to facilitate them, just like the physical roads in our city. So that way of thinking, I think, is very important for cities to understand. And from there, ask themselves the question, okay, do we have a role in it, or do we leave it to the market parties in that?
Yeah,
okay,
important questions. You're very right. I'd like to also give the opportunity to Tanguy to give some information also on what their learnings are. As an RTO, working with a lot of cities, but also with regions and maybe with other actors in this network around digital twins. So which are the learnings you'd like to also share?
Yeah, well, I think we already discussed the procurement part, and I think that's very, very important, really learning from like how to work with, let's say, society, either public or private sector, through procurement. I think that's crucial. So everything that goes in that direction, and that is currently going on, for example, Roland in Rotterdam, would be very interesting for us to hear about. We're also doing procurement in Flanders. So I think we can do some interesting comparison of notes there. But also, I think a reference architecture on which you can base your procurement is important and interesting, but also the design methodology is important. Like, how do you design a digital twin? Because quite often we get questions from a city saying like, yeah, that's all. It sounds very interesting and cool, but what does it mean when you apply it to our city? And a city is a very complex thing with many different like political realities and strategic agendas. And how do you map the concept of digital twin with all its technological possibilities to what is really relevant to a city? I think that also deserves some attention.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we shared, of course, a very important elements through the best practices, but also through this discussion at the end of what's needed actually to realize digital twins and advance digital twins at the European level as well, to make sure that they're as effective as possible. So I found this a very interesting discussion, and I hope to thank you all, the organizers of the OWASC for the whole conference, and also the panelists and the participants for contributing actually to this very interesting discussion. So I'd like to thank you all and wish you a very pleasant lunch in this Corona time. And I hope to see you and to meet you in the near future to collaborate in the field of digital twins with all of you. Thank you very much.